so I know I've got stuff to do a little bit here, and so don't want to take up the valuable time of our good city people. So we'll go ahead and get the meeting started, and hopefully a couple of these folks will dribble in as we go along. So don't think we have a quorum, so we can't really approve minutes, but we'll go ahead and get started with the reports. Aaron and Greg, if you want to just kind of go down the agenda and bring us up to date and field questions.
I'm just pulling up the agenda.
First one would be the landing. Any updates there?
Yeah, through you, Chairman. The landing, we're moving forward. Don't have too many updates. We have, I think I said last meeting, we have started re-engaging with property owners west or east of Cedar Point Drive. Those conversations are going real well. We're hoping to finalize all the acquisition this year, so we can get moving next year. So that's really the only update. It's all acquisition related right now. And those conversations, as you can imagine, some go slow, some go quickly.
Yep. Great. Okay, the pathway?
Similar on the pathway. I don't know if you guys are aware or not, but we do have, I know you're aware that on the west side utility, we are going to be installing that pathway this spring. We're still trying to get the final details of all the amenities that will be on it, and that's on Venice Road from Cold Creek, not Cold Creek Boulevard, but Cold Creek, the actual stream, all the way to Edgewater. And the part that I'm not sure if you guys are aware of, in 2022, we're resurfacing Meggs, and that portion of the pathway will be installed on that project. And then in 23, we're resurfacing Water Street between Meggs and Franklin, Shoreline Drive, whatever you want to say. And that portion of the pathway will be completed. So what you see out there on Water Street is not final right now. That's something that's just temporary.
Is now joining.
So we do have plans over the next 2 years, 3 years of segments coming on board. So that the good thing is that affords us a little more time to work through the acquisition of the remaining portions of the pathway. So as we're going through all that, we will be bringing sections online as we finalize those things, and hopefully we can get the whole thing done in 5 to 7 years is the goal. We'll see how that goes as we get people pushing to not give us property or sell property or whatever else. So I do want to be very clear, because I hear it all the time from people, and I know there was an article that came out last year at some point that we have not had conversations with anybody about eminent domain. And even though that topic comes up, we've never looked at using that as a means by which to acquire property. We're working with every property owner the best we can to get everything that we need and give them a fair compensation. So we're obviously starting with donations, but the term eminent domain, I'm not aware of it coming up in any conversation. So if you guys hear that would be completely untrue.
And as one of our duties is trying to head off misinformation out in the public. So certainly if we can, if we do hear that, if we can steer people in the right direction, that would be helpful.
Absolutely. Thank you.
A quick question along those lines, Mr. Chairman. Was there an attempt to obtained some of the properties in the paper district by eminent domain back, what, 2004, 5 era, which could be leading to those rumors.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'm unaware of any. Sometimes in a negotiation, not the threat, but the implied, you're in a zero negotiating position without the threat of eminent domain. But it was about that time that Ohio made it illegal to use eminent domain for recreation issues and made it more difficult for any development project, short of, transportation. They set the bar for public necessity very high and and explicitly, I think, excluded recreational uses in Ohio, even though it would be constitutional in the U.S. It was sort of a blowback of some things that happened in Cleveland that I think we might be aware of. So if you're asking, did it happen? I don't recall any.
I know it didn't happen. I just was,
even
there was discussion of it.
Yeah. And I would be, would be a mistake, I think, to bring it up publicly.
Right. I just wondered why there would have been discussion, and I'm wondering if that had something to do with it.
So, my insight is that it would have been, I think by then it would have been illegal anyway. So people speculate, people don't really understand it. And when it comes to acquiring property, the best thing to do is keep it as, on the down low as possible, because otherwise you're just embarrassing sellers and muddying the waters.
Right.
Right.
Through Mr. Chairman, I would like to say too that, I only bring up the eminent domain, and that's always a negative thing, but I would like to say that the majority of the property owners that we're talking to are all in favor of the pathway. There are definitely some that say no, they don't like it, or an HOA or a group of people that say they don't like it. But for the most part, many of the property owners, I wouldn't say the majority, but many of the property owners are saying, you know what, this is going to help. This is going to help the city, my business, my patrons, everybody else. And, we may even be willing to donate. So let's have those discussions first. And it's been a really good process to see a lot of people in the community coming together. Obviously, you're going to have people that hold out and want to make a buck or whatever, but for the most part, we've had a lot of people that are just completely in favor of the pathway, especially when they see that we're trying to be as least invasive as possible to their property or family's property or something like that. So,
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
It's been invariable that there is a fear among some residents of the negative consequences of pathways. It's almost, you can prove that it's never a safety threat and always a value enhancement. But it's often a matter of education, and publicity doesn't help. But education does. And if you can show people that property owners almost always, invariably benefit from pathways and are, you have to look long and hard to find a place where they're harmed by it. That's more helpful done privately.
Okay. Thanks, Mike, for that. I appreciate it. Anything else on the pathway? If not, West End utilities and connectivity. You're on mute, Aaron.
Sorry about that. That project we did briefly just discuss about the trail coming in. We are finishing up the water line. over the next few weeks. We're hoping to get that trail online first thing coming out of the gate in the spring, which would be around the April-May timeframe. I think I mentioned previously that our goal is to get a lot of the amenities installed immediately, but some of those things may delay a little bit. So we are going to include them as part of the project. We're just trying to get those final specs and details on each of the items that we would be installing. One thing that we have those beautiful banners downtown on Shoreline Drive. We're looking at doing something similar out there, but we don't necessarily have approval from AT&T to put those banners on their telephone poles at this time. So there are those details that we're trying to work out. So if things don't, I guess what I'm trying to get at is if the paving comes and we don't have the banners up immediately, we're working on it. We're trying to get all those details figured out as we go through the project. So we will bring it to the same standard.
What's the penalty for an unauthorized banner?
Probably ripping it down and whatever the cost of the banner is.
Just wondering.
Mr. Chairman, Carl's muted, but I think he said to go ahead. The one thing I'd like to add is there's a transportation alternative monies available through the MPO, and I know we're looking at possibly using that to fund the sidewalk between Edgewater to Venice. So I know that's been a long time discussion from this group. So we are exploring some opportunities to use some available funding for that.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else on the West End? Okay, downtown master plan.
So that was approved at first reading last week, and thank you all for your input and feedback during the last few months. Really, after Monday's meeting, assuming that and hoping that it gets adopted, we're going to move right into implementation. And I know Eric has shared the top 3 projects he wants to get going on. So we will continue to appreciate you getting the word out about the plan and seeing it move into the implementation phase.
Any questions, comments on the downtown master plan?
Mr. Chairman, this is David. Can you hear me?
Yes, David, we can hear you.
Greg, could you remind me of what those top 3 priorities that Eric's authorized moving forward on?
Sure, it was the Columbus Avenue Streetscape project, the Jackson Street parking lot project, so basically an anchor hotel and conference center with the parking garage, and then programming and activities downtown.
So what kind of time frame are we looking at with actually changing the streetscape or initiating a hotel on the Jackson Street parking lot?
That's hard to tell. I would guess we still have to do a lot of engineering work for the streetscape. So it'll be a similar line for how we started the Jackson Street Pier and Shoreline Drive conversations, which, Aaron, was that like a 3-year process from start of really planning to end? So that's probably for Columbus Avenue. With the Jackson Street Pier, I think that's really up in the air and involves a lot of private entities and that sort of thing. So I would struggle to give a good estimate on that. But for programming activities, we're hoping to get something out there ready for when we basically get the okay for COVID safe activities in the summertime.
Mr. Chairman.
And those sort of start or are centered on the Bylander Pavilion, or am I just making that up?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, yes, that is correct.
Yeah.
Be on the Jackson Street Pier.
Thank you.
All right.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so this sort of reminds me, the danger with the downtown plan, it sort of reminds me of the Lions Park plan, which was a master plan for the park. I mean, it's a master plan. You could do some of it next year. You could do some of it 10 years from now. Some of it might not start till 20 years from now. It's a long-term plan, right? So to guide all future development. And almost immediately, we were getting demands on Lions Park of, well, next year, like, how come it's not done, right? So you have to manage expectations on this. Is that it's to guide all future development, until you redo the plan, and some of it might never happen. Some of it, could happen. If something begins next year, well, it should be informed by that plan. But when it comes to private development, we don't get to decide when the market says it's time for this stuff to happen. So it's not something that we're going to roll up our sleeves and go to work on next week. I'm not, and Mr. Miller perfectly knows that perfectly well. I'm just not trying to inform Mr. Miller. I'm trying to inform or learn that we should learn to manage the expectations here. And I'm only using Lions Park as a prior example that we understand well enough.
Okay. Thank you for that. I mean, that obviously we have to manage expectations on a project of the scopes that we're talking about. It does take time. Anything else on the downtown master plan? Okay, we'll move on to the Cedar Point Causeway Wetlands Project.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. That is our wetlands that we are hoping to install. We have had conversations over the past couple of weeks. Our goal all along has been to get that project fully constructed by the time Cedar Point opened for the year, so we would not cause problems for their visitors. As those of you in the field are unfortunately aware, that working with the Corps of Engineers is never an easy task. So we are still waiting on a permit from the Corps of Engineers, and we are in the process of letting them know that because of their delays and because of basically just their processes that they go through on things, that we will unlikely be able to have the project ready for their dredging this year, and that we have to start having some difficult conversations with them and come up with a new schedule. Our schedule now is possibly looking to be pushed to late this year, so that it can be ready for a dredging cycle next year. It's really unfortunate, but that's what happens when you're working with two different entities, and those entities are the Corps of Engineers or the railroad. So, that's just the way it works with them. So in this case, unfortunately, we may be looking to have to push that project back another 6 months or so. But it's still on the books. It's still something that we're going to move forward, and it's one of those things that the environmental implications of that project and the research that we can get out of that project, the federal government and the state government absolutely love it. So, we're still going to be doing it. It's just a matter of when at this point.
Okay. Very good. Any questions on the wetlands project? All right, we'll move on to erosion.
Mr.
Yeah, Bill.
Chairman.
I'm sorry.
Where were we creating those wetlands?
Yeah, yes, sir. Through you, Mr. Chairman, this would be just south and connected to the overflow parking lot at Cedar Point. and on the west side of the causeway.
Got it.
We do have I can't remember if it's 20-foot buffer between the causeway and the start of the wetlands to allow for potential future expansion of the causeway, whether that's for some sort of traffic, bike, whatever, some sort of expansion that they may do in the future. So we're not infringing on them, but we did get an easement from them so that we can do the project adjacent to their property.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Where, just out of curiosity, Aaron, where does the railroad enter into this?
Excuse me, I'm sorry, what was?
I believe you, I thought I heard you mention the railroad and the Corps of Engineers. What's the railroads, where does that come in?
No, I was just talking, they don't come into this project, but really with any project, like even on the Sandusky Bay pathway, they're just a hurdle that you have to jump about a dozen times to get through.
Sure, I can understand on the pathway. All right, I was just trying to figure out on the wetlands where the railroad was going over there. All right, thank you for the clarification. All right, we'll move on then to erosion control at Shoreline Park.
Yes, sir, and if you don't mind, I'd like to group the Shoreline Park and the Transient Marina together. Let me show you, if you don't mind, I have a few pictures that I might be able to figure out how to share.
All right.
Can you see that?
Yes.
All right, so what you're seeing there, that's the Transient Marina at the beginning of the project. That's what it looked like, and that's why we needed to spend on this site about $20,000. It was really sloughing off. We were going to be, you can see the hill coming up right here. We were really encroaching on that buffer between deep water and the city's marina. So what we ended up with is, you can see it in this picture, the rock protection along here on the back side. Deep Water was very happy with the work that was done as well. They even let us use their drive area to get access to the site to do the work. Contractor did it when the ground was frozen, so it was minimal impact to the site. The other project, I have this on the screen behind me as well, but this is what we ended up doing at the center finger at Shoreline Park. You can see our drone people right here, just to get a size of how far back we went.
Yeah.
So this is what I think it was around $30,000 at this site cost, but we were losing everything. I don't have the before pictures, but you can see the rock here.
David.
It's a little older.
Is now exiting.
That's the stuff that was here at the beginning of the project. And this was all void and vacant all along here. There was no rock left between this and the shoreline. So with the high water levels, we lost quite a bit. And this is hopefully going to help it last. We did get images recently, yesterday, from Jason Whirling, as you can imagine, just like over this past weekend when my kids were walking in Columbus with me, of rocks, smaller rocks, maybe this big, in the middle of the ice, where children are picking them up and trying to break the ice, which, like I said, that's what my kids did this past weekend when we were in Columbus. So hopefully we can get the word out and, you know, have people not have their family throwing rocks out there. But no matter what you do, it's always enticing to try to break through the ice and see how thick it is. So it's not unexpected, but you know, we'll keep reinforcing it, and hopefully we can adapt more quickly in the future if water levels stay at a good elevation.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Michael.
Yeah, I've had experience with, I mean, did some landscaping and I chose rocks too small to do any damage, right? So you have two choices in public spaces, in my opinion. They either have to be too small to be a missile to break a window easily, or they have to be too big to easily lift. That's a constraint. It's not terribly intuitive, but I'm old. I've got experience in these matters. So.
Yeah. Well, through you, Mr. Chairman, one thing I would say is that the rock that I did see that was thrown onto the ice, that was on the older sections. The rock that we just placed is big enough not to be thrown, but we have had reports in the past of, mostly on the eastern finger in the same park, of children picking up stones, pebbles, things like that, and throwing them towards the boats. So we've been very conscious of exactly what Mr. Zulof's talking about and trying to keep bigger rock out there that cannot be used as a projectile, whatever the word is.
And I was just going to comment on that, Aaron, having a boat in the Yacht Club Marina, my boat's in far enough from the break wall that it would really take a strong arm, and we'd sign him up for the NFL right now. But seeing virtually daily rocks being thrown into the marina, and some people have a little stronger arm than others, and they do make it to the boats. So it's one of those things. It's the size and heft is in the eyes of the thrower. So, and some would surprise you how far they can throw them, no matter how big or small. So, okay. Any other comments on the erosion? I think that those projects both look good. Really appreciate that we're taking care of the erosion and cleaning up the waterfront at the same time. So,
one more comment. It's not those two projects, but we do have the other project, and we're trying to get a schedule from the contractor on the western finger at Shoreline Drive, and hopefully I'll have an update for you at the next meeting as to exactly when we expect that contractor to be back on site.
Mr. Chairman?
Okay. Yes, sir, Mike.
Before we get into the water lines thing, something more locally, and maybe this is for Mr. Volz or as well, or somebody in the community development or zoning. There seems to be some moving some dirt around at the corner of First Street and F Street. I don't know if I'm pretty sure it's hydric soils there, but it doesn't much matter. The first question is, is there a permit? What's going on there? They're definitely changing elevations and grading there. I'm not even sure who owns it. I think one of the properties seems to have one Ann Groff as an LLC or something. But I wonder if you're aware of anything going on there, because there's definitely work going on, and it would be interesting to know what's going on. All right.
Okay. Any other old business that anyone has for the group?
Mr. Chairman, Steve Pajali here.
Yes. Hi, Steve.
Hey, how you doing, Carl? Hey,
good.
I probably should have asked this back when Aaron was talking about those wetlands. I wondered if he could just give us a brief update on the roundabout over on Cedar Point Drive.
Okay.
Absolutely. Sorry about that. We're still going through qualifications. We got qualifications back maybe 3 weeks ago, still ranking them. We got 8, 2 of which are non-compliant with what we had sent, what we had requested in the qualifications. So we're reviewing 6. I'm probably the one delaying that scoring. So I'm hoping to have it done this week, and then we can set up, we can move forward with hiring a consultant.
Okay.
Thanks, Aaron.
Okay, any other old business? If not, we'd look for new business. It's not on the agenda, but there should be new business. Any new business anyone has? Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Michael?
I saw something on that. I don't remember what the details were, but somehow it was framed as a repair or replacement of a prior bridge. So are we, maybe someday we can get some clarification on what the history is there.
I can provide that if you'd like.
Sure, please do.
Yeah, north of Kiwanis Park, right where the wetlands touches the dike around the wetlands touches the mainland, there's a ditch that runs kind of northwesterly, and it's a very small ditch. It's maybe only 10 feet wide, if that, and it's only maybe 4 feet deep. I think it would be very generous to call what was there previously a bridge. It was more boards and stuff that were laid like you would do when you were a child to get across something that was wet. So it was nothing that was really effective, but it did work to walk across it when water was in it. Now, the last time I was out there, that bridge was gone and you could still walk across it because it was just a little mucky and you just had to lunge to get past the mucky area. So what we've talked about over the past couple years or year is trying to see if we can put something out there. There were discussions previously about making a bridge that equipment could drive across. That just doesn't seem necessary. It was more for ODOT to maintain or ODNR to maintain the area, but that doesn't seem necessary. They have access points elsewhere. So really what's happening, Mr. Schwanger was working with somebody and they threw out the idea of creating more of just a pedestrian, small wooden pedestrian bridge to span that area. And I know I was speaking with one of the parents of one of the students that was looking at doing that work, and he was asking if we were okay with it, and we absolutely are. It's something that I think it would be helpful for the area and just for pedestrians and foot traffic to not have to get down in the muck and in the water when the water level's high. So it's a simple project, but it's more of just coming up with a span and what you need, and it should be a bridge that is definitely doable for an Eagle Scout type of a project.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mike.
So I suppose, asking Mr. Klein to put on his engineering hat, I imagine you're also considering things that might be more durable, or maybe looking at whether just a culvert is feasible. I get a little worried about an improperly engineered bridge that could become a hazard later. I mean, not a big deal because sometimes it's pretty obvious that it is, but maybe as long as we're looking at all the options, that would be fine.
Yeah, through the chairman, we did consider a culvert. Fortunately, a culvert would require permitting and through the ODNR and everything else. So I don't know if the Eagle Scout wants to get involved with that at this point. So as long as they can build a bridge that stays above any water elevation, then they should be okay. And we understand that it might not be a 50-year project. It could be something that's more temporary that we need to make more durable in the future, but at least for the short term, whether that's 5, 15 years, it should be sufficient. So.
And to be clear, this is city-owned real estate?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay. Through you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, David.
Yeah, I'd like to just chime in on that project a little bit. As a Kiwanian, we've taken some effort in trying to maintain that area. The Friends of Pipe Creek periodically do cleanups around those cells. And I know what Aaron's talking about. The most recent previous bridge, I think, was constructed out of pallets, perhaps. I think by making the bridge narrow enough that someone's not tempted to go across it with an ATV might be sufficient. But I think the people who use it most, there are fishermen who use wheeled conveyances to drag their chairs and fishing equipment out there. My experience with it is mostly trying to empty the trash barrel that sits on the northern side of that ditch, and it's sometimes difficult to get stuff out of there if you can't even use a wheelbarrow. But something that you could take a wheelbarrow or a wagon or one of those drag behind carts like people use to haul their groceries around town, that would be a significant improvement from my perspective.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Any other projects, comments, concerns? Don't believe we have any general public here. I see Mr. Harris is on. Mr. Harris, you have anything to add today? And his microphone is still muted, so I believe. Oh, there he goes.
No. Yeah, no, I don't at the moment. No.
All right.
Sorry, there.
Thank you.
I was in the middle.
Thank you again for joining us today. Appreciate that.
Sure thing. Sure thing.
The next, with that being said, I believe that's all the business today. So we would be going into adjournment. The next meeting is April. Actually, I think we could go back to approval of minutes. I think we have enough people here now to do business. So I think we could approve the minutes.
Move
last
to
meeting.
approve. Mark Harrington, move to approve minutes.
Thanks,
Second,
Mark.
Steve Pajali.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right. Thank you very much for a productive meeting. The next meeting, the memo is April 1st, April Fool's Day. So let's not fool each other. Let's be here and we'll get it together. All right.
I'll be sure to get the Teams meeting out more than 5 minutes before next time.
All right. Thank you, Greg. Hey, Mark, I do have a question. Which castle is that?